On the 6th of March 1987, the shipping industry changed forever when the ro-ro passenger ferry Herald of Free Enterprise accidentally left port with her bow doors open. As she picked up speed, the bow wave grew, breaching the door level and flooding the car deck almost instantaneously. Just seconds after leaving the harbour, Herald of Free Enterprise was laying on her side, capsized on a sandbank, in an incident which tragically claimed the lives of 193 people. So what went wrong? How could such a seemingly simple error so quickly descend into one of the worst peacetime incidents in the history of commercial shipping? Herald of Free Enterprise was a Spirit-class roll-on roll-off passenger ferry commissioned by Townsend Thorenson in the late 1970s for the Dover-Calais route. Launched on the 21st of December 1979, she was one of three sisters with an overall length of around 132 metres and capacity for 1,400 people. The Spirit class had been designed specifically for the busy cross-channel route, with features such as forward and aft access to multiple car decks for rapid loading and discharging and fast acceleration to get up to speed quickly for the short crossing. In her normal ports of Dover and Calais, the shore facilities included dual link spans where vehicles could get onto E and G decks simultaneously. It worked great when the ship was on her regular route. However, in March 1987, Herald of Free Enterprise was working between Dover and Zeebrugge instead. In Zeebrugge, they only had a single link span, which naturally slowed loading, and to make matters even worse, it couldn't actually reach the height of E deck if the tide was too high. To compensate for this, the crew would ballast down the forward end of the ship using a couple of forward ballast tanks which could hold around 310 cubic metres of water. The thing is, the ballast pumps could only deliver around 120 cubic metres of water per hour, so the ballasting operation had to begin 2 hours before arrival, and deballasting could run until a few hours after departure. Anyway, the crew were quite used to this, so on the afternoon of the 6th of March 1987, they completed loading as per usual and commenced discharging the extra ballast around 1740. Across the ship, the usual call for harbour stations summoned the crew to their respective duties in preparation for leaving the berth. The first officer left the vehicle deck where he'd been supervising the loading and headed towards the bridge, fully expecting the assistant boatswain to report for duty and close the bow doors before letting go. Unfortunately, the assistant boatswain was still asleep in his cabin, having slept through the harbour station's announcements, so no one noticed that the doors remained open. From the bridge, it was impossible to see the forward doors, and there was no remote indication panel telling them the status, so the master assumed all was good and commenced letting go. At 18:05, they left the berth and moved astern along the quay, swinging to starboard as they cleared the knuckle. At 18:24, they'd completed the harbour transit and were passing the outer breakwater, increasing speed in preparation for the crossing. By now, the ballast pumps had been running for around 45 minutes and had got rid of approximately a third of the ballast that they'd taken on earlier. This increased the height of the bow a little, but Herald of Free Enterprise was still trimmed by the head. To make matters worse, the increasing speed was actually sucking the ship lower down into the water due to an effect known as squat. Essentially, in shallow water, the flow of water around the hull gets constrained, increasing its velocity and decreasing its pressure. The lower pressure then sucks the ship towards the seabed, making it sit deeper in the water. Normally we're worried about squat in terms of a reduction in under-keel clearance, but on the Herald of Free Enterprise it caused an additional problem. The remaining ballast, combined with the squat effect from increasing speed, and the bow wave, again from the increased speed, meant that the water level ended up above the bottom of the open bow door. Within seconds, Herald of Free Enterprise was scooping up tons of water, lowering the bow even further and completely destroying her stability. The open nature of the vehicle decks on these sort of ferries quickly leads to a loss of stability in a flooding scenario thanks to a thing called the free surface effect. If you could spread the weight of water evenly across the deck, it would probably be okay, but ships roll around and water likes to flow downhill. This means that as a ship leans over even a little bit, additional water weight accumulates on the lower side, leaning the vessel even further over and moving even more water onto that side. On a vehicle deck, where water has the full width of the ship to flow, it doesn't take much water to add significant amount of weight right out on one side and cause a vessel to roll over completely. On the Herald of Free Enterprise, once the bow wave breached the open door, within seconds she started leaning heavily over to port. The initial sloshing did right the ship briefly, but by the second lurch, it was all over. She capsized onto her port side, coming to rest on a sandbar within a mile of the harbour entrance. The crew of a nearby dredger raised the alarm when they noticed the Herald of Free Enterprise suddenly plunging into darkness as their emergency systems flooded. Helicopters and nearby vessels rushed to their aid and rescued as many as they could, but despite their efforts, tragically, 193 people still lost their lives that night. Later investigations ultimately determined that there were 3 immediate causal factors: the assistant bosun failing to close the doors, the first officer leaving the vehicle deck before confirming that the doors had been closed, and the master leaving port without knowing for certain whether the doors were actually closed. The thing is, as with any incident, you have to dig deeper to find out the underlying factors that led to the immediate causal factors if you want to prevent this same incident from happening again. For example, when we ask why the assistant bosun failed to close the door, we find that he was asleep in his cabin and didn't wake up with the harbour station's tannoy announcement. Dig a little deeper again, and we find that this same thing had happened before, with a different assistant bosun failing to appear for duty when the announcement didn't wake him. Now, we suddenly need to question the working practices in general and the culture from senior management that was causing exhaustion that led, on multiple occasions, to professional seafarers missing their call to duty. As for the first officer failing to confirm the door was closed, well, we need to ask why he left the vehicle deck before receiving visual confirmation. It seems that his harbour station's duty was on the bridge, so there is obviously some sort of mismatch between confirming the doors had been closed at the same time as undertaking his duty on the bridge. In terms of the master leaving port before confirming the doors were closed, again, when we ask why, a different story emerges. The design of the ship meant that it was impossible to see the doors, so third-party verification was required. An indication light would be the logical solution and had, in fact, been requested on the ships multiple times but was deemed non-urgent by upper management ashore. Their view was essentially that they're paying professionals to close the door, so shouldn't need to pay for additional equipment to verify that the job had been done. No, for departure, the master had to rely on reports from the crew members instead, but surprisingly, in the absence of any report, the company's instruction actually stated the master will assume at the due sailing time that the vessel is ready for sea in all respects. As you can see, although the immediate causal factors may have come from the actions of personnel on the day itself, the ultimate cause appears to have come from much higher up in the overall management and culture of the company. Indeed, when you look a bit further, you actually find these vessels had accidentally sailed with the bow doors open on numerous previous occasions, but they'd gotten away with it because other causal elements, such as the additional ballast and the effective squat, weren't present at the time. The Herald of Free Enterprise accident marked a turning point in the management of shipping companies, acting as a catalyst in the development of the International Safety Management, or ISM code. The code is basically all about creating a safer management culture within shipping companies, with specific personnel with direct board access given responsibility for the oversight of ship operations, as well as instructions for things like a safety management system containing standard working practices and regular audits and inspections to ensure that vessels are operated correctly. The Herald of Free Enterprise disaster not only exposed severe lapses in communication procedures and management accountability, but also highlighted the critical need for systemic change across the maritime industry. The tragedy served as a stark reminder that safety cannot be taken for granted and that complacency at any level can lead to catastrophic consequences. The subsequent implementation of the ISM code marked a significant shift towards a more structured and safety-focused approach in shipping operations. By mandating thorough oversight, clear communication and regular audits, the code has since played a crucial role in preventing similar disasters, ensuring that lessons learned from the Herald of Free Enterprise are not forgotten, but instead are integrated into the fabric of maritime safety worldwide. As always, I'd just like to extend a massive thanks to this channel's Plus supporters on Patreon. Your continued support helps to keep these videos free to view across social media, so on behalf of everyone watching, thank you all so much.